We are doing another Q&A. We're answering your questions. We're going to break them down, analyze them up next. Welcome aboard to another Q&A OG55 edition. We are going to kick this off today, but before we do that, I want to wish our good friend, Mr. Family Man 23, a very, very happy birthday. George, we love you, man.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Gotta have it.
You're too kind. It's great to be 21.
Right? You can finally drink now, George, legally.
Yeah, I know. I could put my fake ID away.
Yeah, exactly. So, George, we'll start with you. If you can let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Disney Family Man 23. If you want to interact with me, you could do so on Twitter at Disney George. And of course, you could always find me here on Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, and yet sticky Disney news and info.
Perfect.
Balls to the Walls edition, of course.
Yes.
Balls to the walls, as always. And right over here, we got Vash Guy, Dr. Dre, host of the Freshly Squeezed Show here on OG55. Welcome back, brother. If you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Hey, best place to find me is going to be at Vashka. It's right down there. Just go ahead and type that into Twitter. Should pop up right there for, as Christian Wastelands McCarthy would say, for all the robust discussion right there. And if you want to go ahead and see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
Pay attention, it's Joe time.
There you go.
All right, let's get this party started, y'all.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to all who come to this happy place, welcome to Orange Grove 55.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
I love it. All right, so we're going to kick this off right now. We got the Q&A. First question comes from Michael Ebba. And Michael's asking, hey, guys, why do you think other Disney parks get more Walt Disney Imagineering attention than Disneyland Resort does? I'm really hoping this year's D23 for Disneyland being the spotlight this year. Love your content. Keep up the great work. Well, Michael, thank you so much for the kind words. We do appreciate it. I'll start with you, Mr. Family Man. You're our D23, our resident D23 expert, and it's your birthday, so I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on Michael's comment?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with him on that note. I think that this year is going to be Disneyland's year. I think it's way overdue, especially from the past D23 expos, that it's, as you have put it, OG, it's always been the Walt Disney World show, and I think now more than ever, especially what's going on, with moving of the Imagineers down to Florida and, still things up in the air right now with Reedy Creek and what have you. I think that Disney is going to kind of lean more towards California as far as with projects go. And I think, a little taste of that is not just with Disneyland Forward, but just to kind of give us a hint that moving forward, no pun intended, that, they still have Disneyland in mind. They're not just kind of putting them aside for how they did for the past how many years. And I think the main reason why Disneyland hasn't gotten so much love, in the past is because of the situation in Anaheim with a lot of zoning and what have you. And it's just the amount of space that they can use, because right now, in order for them to utilize what they have, it's either they expand or they start replacing stuff that's already in the park. And I don't think they want to do that for Disneyland, because then they'd have to start blocking off certain areas of the park, closing things down, and you'd get just a whole lot of congestion. So I think that, expansion, especially for Disneyland, is the way to go. And I think that's the route that they're going to be taking. And I think at this D23 Expo, we may not get nothing specific, but I think that we'll start getting some leadway into the future that's the route that they're going to go for Disneyland.
Perfect. Mr. Vasky, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, people, I mean, there's a good question to be had there. Why do the other, parks and resorts around the world get more attention? So the question, that answer as to why is kind of multifaceted because, Disney had upped its stake in Paris, its financial and ownership stake in Paris. So obviously, they had to get, returns, for better or for worse, for lack of a better term, I should say. They had to get returns from that resort relatively quickly in order to make that financial stake pay off. So I think that's why we've kind of been hearing from Paris. Walt Disney World obviously is kind of the cash cow, and it really, that Walt Disney World and Disneyland is really the differences between them aren't just the number of parks, but it's the number of hotels. And the number of hotel rooms specifically. So at Disneyland, there's about 3,000 or so hotel rooms, give or take. It might be even a little bit less than that. Whereas at Walt Disney World, there's well over 36,000. So that's the kind of delta that you have right there. So any investment into any of these parks, you're looking at a return on investment, right? You're looking at that ROI. And ROI, that situation at Walt Disney World is a little bit different than it is out there in Disneyland. And so that's why you might see maybe more investment from one side or the other. Disneyland's model, however, and this is why I kind of differ a little bit with how this question is formed, because honestly, I think Disneyland, with all of its problems regarding size, regarding ROI and all those kind of things, I think it actually kind of surpasses what may be expected from this resort. It's had a huge swath of investment the last kind of 10 years or so that has kind of really put it on the map, and a lot more than maybe the company should. just kind of looking at it from a distance. There has been significant levels of investment. And it's interesting that local populace, that kind of attendance mix kind of thing, is one of the big reasons why, evidently enough. It's to get not only the locals to come back and spend money themselves, but also to attract more tourists and international visitation on a kind of a continual rolling basis. It's just the problem is how do you capitalize on that when you don't have hotel rooms to offer, when you have a limited selection of food and so forth? It makes it a little bit more complicated, which is why I think George actually described it pretty well. Disneyland Forward pushes you in that kind of direction to get that kind of to be able to capitalize on some of these on some of the markets that Disney really wants to kind of look into regarding the Disneyland Resort. But I think that provides a little bit more of a what is it, a tangible view, let's say, of the situation than I think people might not understand on the surface.
I think, Michael, it's kind of like your question's interesting because I kind of have two opinions for the same question. It's kind of odd. I agree with you in terms of D23 Expo that Disneyland gets the shaft constantly. That the Expo is definitely the Walt Disney World show. I disagree with the opinion, though, that Imagineering gives other parks more attention. The Be Fair to Florida thing on social media is a thing because Floridians feel like they're being mistreated or like that Disney doesn't pay enough attention to their resort. Look, we've gotten nighttime parade after nighttime parade. Florida never gets nighttime parades. Disneyland's got the most attractions of any Disney park in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, we're constantly getting new Halloween offerings and holiday offerings.
Yeah.
It's like an endless stream of new stuff at Disneyland. All the rumors going into D23 Expo this year are all about Disneyland.
Yeah.
So I disagree that Imagineering favors the other parks and Disneyland is sort of like an afterthought. I kind of think the opposite. I think Disneyland is very much, in terms of the Imagineers here in Glendale, very much the forefront. And the other parks like Florida are kind of like the whatever. Because if you look at the state of these parks, if you look at Disneyland and DCA compared to the state of the Florida parks, oh man, there's no comparison. I mean, the Florida parks need way more work than California parks do. Now, The Expo is a different story because the Expo, yes, that's all Florida. Florida gets all the announcements, but like the real actual work, the real actual stuff being built and done, I think Disneyland gets more. I got to be honest. I think they favor Disneyland. I think that's why Floridians are so mad.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a prioritization for these other parks, I mean, there are reasons for that being the case, but I agree with OG here. This is why I'm like, yeah, I mean, D23 Expo for sure, ain't no question. It's always everybody else's show. But as far as like the level of investment in Disneyland, I mean, it has been significant. Like I said earlier, it's like it has surpassed what you might think is like a good investment. Because of some of the things that kind of restrain that investment, right? You can't build hotels like you can build out in Walt Disney World, right? You can't necessarily expand on the same level and scale and size, magnitude, scope, speed at which you can in Walt Disney World, and yet there's still a level of investment there. So it's Disneyland Resort is kind of interesting because it's the little resort that can, Yeah. But George, do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah. Well, and the more time that I actually get to spend at Disneyland, for quite recently, it's been a lot, and hey, no complaints, that I'm starting to see the more time that I'm there, despite there only being 2 parks and it being a smaller resort than Walt Disney World, I find myself finding new and more ways to enhance that experience than honestly that I could ever do at Walt Disney World. Because as we talked about it before, yes, there's 4 parks, but separate each attraction that's in per park at Walt Disney World compared to the 2 at Disneyland, and Disneyland still has more. So It's like when you look at the bigger picture, as you fellas had mentioned it, kind of Disneyland already had the notion of being kind of the top dog, but a lot of people just tend to look at the size. And, and a lot of things, I'm sorry, folks, size doesn't matter, because it's, Walt Disney World is 10 times bigger than Disneyland, and I'm sorry, when it comes to attractions go and some of the offerings, Disneyland kicks Disney World's ass. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And you said, and George, I like how you said, for some things, size doesn't matter. That was good, my friend. That was good.
Oh, here we go.
Yes, folks, we only have high-class stuff on this show.
That's right.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And the next question comes from our friend Isidoro Rendon. Isidoro is asking, keep it going, love all the content. With the rumored Thunder Mountain and Space Mountain movie in development, do you think we have more of a chance for the Tomorrowland redo since they are effectively trying to make Space Mountain the IP? Now, I think what Isidoro is referring to, if I'm not mistaken, I think Dave from Fresh Baked actually made a video about this, speculating that they're going to basically turn Space Mountain into a franchise, similar to what they did with Pirates, where it started off as an attraction, and then it went into the movies, and then the movies created this kind of franchise, right? They kind of worked in reverse. They reverse engineered it. Usually it's the IP that becomes the attraction. This time it's the attraction that becomes the IP. And Dave kind of did a whole speculation video about that, how Space Mountain is safe because they're going to turn the attraction into an IP. It's an interesting idea. The issue that I have with it, Isidoro, is that Disney does not have a really good track record with turning attractions into movies, in my opinion. I think Pirates were sort of lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
I enjoy Jungle Cruise, but that is a very forgettable kind of thing. I don't think that's going anywhere in terms of like huge IP in the future. You know what I'm saying? It was a fun movie with The Rock, no doubt. Whatever. Haunted Mansion, don't even want to go there. That movie was just terrible. And for the most part, it doesn't really, they're like video game movies. Like more times than not, they don't really hit.
Yep. I
can't imagine the Space Mountain movie doing huge money in the box office to the point to justify that. I don't see it. I just don't see it. And look, I don't know anything about the movie. It might be the best thing ever. It might completely outdo like the MCU movies at the box office by this juggernaut. Who knows? I don't really see that happening. I think Space Mountain is popular at the parks, and I think that's good enough for Disney. I don't think they're trying to create it, make it like an IP. Would they like it to be an IP? Absolutely. Why not? More money is great. But that's not the goal, I don't think, ultimately. But what do you think, Dre, on that? You think they're trying to effectively create these, make these attractions into IP for this Tomorrowland redo, or is it just kind of?
I think George, I think you might have had something there.
I was just going to say,
okay.
well, it's just like with Brad Bird had tried to accomplish with the Tomorrowland film under the same name, Tomorrowland,
Yeah.
back in 2015, and it was, not saying it was a bad film, but it was like one of those things where, a lot of people, don't really talk about it now. And it's something that can't withhold an attraction overdue, because it has to be something that's timeless, but yet something that is sort of kind of in the sense where people are still talking about it, and to kind of talk about Jungle Cruise. Yes, I really liked it, but it kind of still gave me that Jumanji type feel, like as you said, OG, like that video game type of thing, where it was, again, not a bad movie, and I love the Jumanji franchise, but I don't think that's something that can withhold, for an attraction for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was to say the pirate thing was a total anomaly. Like, that doesn't usually occur. 9 times out of 10, these attraction movies don't really turn out that fantastic.
But I will say it all depends too, also in the writing. If you can get a really good screenwriter that knows how to write this kind of material and kind of take like that storyline, how they did with Pirates, then I think that could also. But now it's like this kind of gumshoe, bubblegum type of comedy that they try to throw in there, and it just, I don't know, it just doesn't work for me. But go ahead, Dre.
Go ahead, Dre.
Yeah, I Jungle Cruise is a very interesting mix between fantasy, whimsy, and reality, and I think it's difficult to get that right, especially translate that on screen. I think that's kind of what hurt Jungle Cruise in the long run. It just wasn't, I don't know, just didn't have the nice the right mixture of elements per se. And I do agree with you, OG. Pirates of the Caribbean is kind of lightning in the bottle. Like you said, I mean, there have been a slew of various projects in development. A Small World, a movie, from what I understand, a Magic Kingdom movie, which I thought had the most potential with Jon Favreau. This kind of Night at the Museum type concept where the animatronic, figures actually come to life in a park after hours. I thought that was really cool of a concept right there. And then Big Thunder, interestingly enough, to go on this comment here, there was actually, I believe, a television series that was developed, I thought it was like 10 years ago now, on for ABC, which was really cool, but that never got anywhere, unfortunately. It's just it's kind of up and down, back and forth. As far as Space Mountain goes, yeah, I suppose there's potential there, but is it really gonna capture that same kind of Pirates of the Caribbean lightning? I don't think so. I think Haunted Mansion definitely has a little bit more upside potentially in this. Maybe even the Tower of Terror movie with Scarlett Johansson, as we've talked about before, maybe that has something there. But as far as Space Mountain and the rest, I'm not entirely sure. Now, I haven't seen Dave's take on the Space Mountain, IP kind of franchise talk, but it's interesting, and I've been having this conversation with my family a lot. The attractions themselves are kind of their own, like the original attractions built, kind of in the 80s, 70s, and beyond there. They're kind of like their own franchises in a way, right? And they kind of exist as their own franchises in terms of like merchandise and food programs and so forth that are themed heavily around them. They're kind of their own IP, so to speak, already. Do you necessarily need to, put them forward into the public consciousness even more via a movie or so forth? I don't think you necessarily do. As far as Tomorrowland goes, there was rumors back in the day. I guess they were going to really lean into that kind of Tomorrowland 1967 aesthetic again for it. So it's kind of like a retro Tomorrowland. I don't know if those plans are still on the table, per se, but we definitely see a lot of smoke in the air in terms of a Tomorrowland redo at D23 Expo. What form that'll ultimately take, I'm not quite sure, but it is fascinating regardless.
100%. And the next question comes from Epic Berserker. And Epic is asking, my question is due to the Warner Brothers Discovery market decreasing by half. Now, what he's referring to kind of let everybody, because a lot of my audience doesn't really follow Warner Brothers. They should, because Warner Brothers is a freaking awesome studio. I love Warner Brothers. But basically, since David Zaslav took over as CEO, and he merged Warner Brothers and Discovery together, I think it was back in April, it was official.
Yeah.
The company has lost like 50% of its market share or something like that, right? A huge amount. And Zaslav is going through some major shit right now with the Batgirl thing, and the trades are going after him like they did with Chapek. There's a whole lot of drama going on with Zaslav, and we'll do a video on him for sure. But just to kind of give the audience a little bit of a background here. So Epic continues with, could we see a suitor swooping in for the picking and making an offer, like, for instance, Comcast Universal? Now, Epic, that's an interesting point. And I've always said, I think Comcast slept on that. Comcast needs IP. I've been saying this like from the rooftops for years now. They need IP. Universal needs to get their IP game in check, because all they have are like 2 or 3 franchises. They got the Minions, Fast and Furious, and Jurassic World. There's really nothing else that they have. They haven't really even properly kind of handled DreamWorks. Like, DreamWorks under Universal hasn't really had any big time movie that's really caught fire in the culture at all. So they need to get their studio in order. And what better way to do that than to acquire one of the best studios in terms of IP and branding than Warner Brothers? I mean, Warner Brothers is really, in my opinion, number 2 to Disney in terms of like franchises and branding and all that stuff. I think it would be great for Universal to kind of swoop in and take Warner Brothers. It would be a huge boon for the Universal parks. I mean, the potential is endless with the characters and the IP that Warner Brothers has. It would be an issue, though, getting approval. Comcast in and of itself is a massive company. And then this Warner Brothers Discovery is also a massive company. I think there would definitely be some legal challenges, legal hurdles they'd have to go through. Probably have to sell off a bunch of assets to even get the deal approved. I would like to see it, though. Will it happen? Definitely not. Zaslav is making major cuts. He's getting a lot of shit like Chapek did. At the end of the day, though, he'll emerge just fine, I think. But in the meantime, it's going to be a lot of growing pains. But what do you think, Dre, in terms of this notion that maybe because, Warner, the market values decreased quite a bit in just a few months, that maybe Universal or some other entity might swoop in and kind of grab it? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting notion for sure, because I think Warner Bros. Discovery is kind of doing a little bit poorly, let's say, poorer than maybe executives would like, that's for sure. And we've talked about on the show how Comcast Universal definitely, they need that IP to really compete with Disney on a massive scale. Now, they have access to great IP, don't get me wrong, but it's very limited, right? It doesn't offer, I think, the diversity that I think Universal would kind of like to see for their parks moving forward, especially now that they're going to have 3 out there in Florida. It's really kind of a question of, if you're going to put something in, what is it going to be themed around to get more domestic and international visitation? It's an interesting idea that maybe Comcast would pick up Warner Bros. Discovery or whatever, this kind of new entity. My thing, though, is that no. and the reason why is because I guess in this latest hit piece on Zaslav, the idea of antitrust really came up. And now, me personally, I think it's kind of sour grapes, because that deal has already kind of been been issued. Now, I understand, there have been instances where the government has come back and broken up companies and so forth. That's unlikely to happen here, however, and these deals were, I mean, it was kind of a major TV entity combining with a major kind of studio entity. You know, as far as the verticals go, you know, they're pretty desperate, right? Whereas Comcast, Universal, and, you know, Warner Brothers Discovery, there's a lot of overlap there. I mean, that would be a complete consolidation. It would be far more monopolistic than the prior merger that had just formed in the form of Warner Brothers Discovery. So that I don't think at all is likely to happen. Now, of course, there are IP that, you know, Comcast maybe could pay for, right? If Zaslav would, you know, be looking to kind of get down their $50 billion debt that they kind of took in from Warner Brothers. You know, there's some potential there for sure to kind of spin some of these things off or license out them the theme park rights anyway, or even the studio rights or whatever to Comcast Universal. That could be an interesting idea for sure. And obviously there has been a relationship between Comcast Universal and what is it, Warner Brothers before, right, in the form of Harry Potter. they had to get some of those rights from some of those entities. So that's an interesting thing. My thing though is if this were to happen, I'm not saying it can't. Obviously, we've seen some amazing stuff in the last 5 years regarding studios and so forth. You might see maybe an Apple kind of take this on, because there wouldn't be that kind of those merging of verticals that I think federal regulators are most concerned about, right? You're already kind of seeing the charge as detailed, like I said in that Hollywood Reporter article about that. I would think because of those regulatory issues, you might see a big company like that, like Apple or somebody else take on this entity. But it's a really interesting question, because I hadn't really considered it, and now we're getting to the point here with the stock price and so forth. Yeah. That these things become more possible.
Yeah, and Comcast really needs, and I've been saying this for such a long time. I mean, they really need IP. They keep going to the same Minion, Jurassic World, and Fast and Furious over and over and over again. I would love them to get Warner, but yeah, like you said, Ray, probably not going to happen. What do you think, George, in terms of this question, in terms of a Comcast swooping in and grabbing Warner? Where you stand with this, sir?
Yeah, I mean, to your sentiments, OG, I would like for that to happen with Comcast. But unfortunately, the reality is I think, as far as with Dre said, I think it's more to the notion. I don't think that they're going to deal with that right now, especially with the stocks and everything. And honestly, companies right now, I apologize, that companies right now are going to be the notion of, it's like Wall Street. It's like dog eat dog. One company is going to take from another, and then you're going to merge this one with that one. Eventually, that's the way it's going to go. I'm not saying either way that if it's going to happen where they're going to purchase Warner or what have you, I don't really see that in the cards right now. It's a possibility. But I think right now everyone is just kind of on a standstill right now. And especially if you were to do it, which I don't think anyone would have the asinine decision to do a purchase like how Disney did with Fox. But, I think after seeing something like that, a lot of people are saying, okay, is this the intention that it's going to be something good, but then it's going to backtrack where we're not going to make any money off of it? But I also agree with you, OG. I do feel like Universal is going to have to eventually do something and get some franchises in there than just the typical Despicable Me and so on and so forth.
100%. And actually, I am getting some breaking news over my desk. It looks like Comcast did, in fact, make a bid for Warner, and Warner has a statement. Let me see if I can get that leaked audio about the statement. Shut up. Okay. Yeah. So they rejected the deal.
I see. Bugs
Bunny personally rejected the deal, so it's not happening, guys.
Hey, just like Bugs Bunny, just like Mickey Mouse, Bugs Bunny, he's the final authority on that. Final say. I don't think it's happening, guys. I don't think it's happening.
It's not happening. It's not happening. Thank you, Epic. I appreciate the question, sir. And the next question comes from our friend Matthew Murr. Do you think the $6 billion? Well, I want to caveat that a little bit with the rumored $6 billion investment. It has not been I don't believe officially announced by Disney, but do you think the $6 billion investment might revitalize the audio animatronics on some attractions? I think what Matthew Murr is referring to is kind of the really bad shape that a lot of the animatronics are in in Splash Mountain. They're in bad shape, but it's kind of
Small World and Pirates of the Caribbean too. I'll include those in because they're in bad shape as well.
Even Disneyland, because Disneyland Pirates just went under refurb.
It did, but the the pirates chasing the women, a lot of those turntables aren't even working anymore. And in Small World, a lot of the dolls, a lot of the the moving figures and so forth, they are static. So it's not just limited to parts to Splash Mountain, but I think I know where you're going with that specifically.
Yeah, well, and Small World has been a problem for years because of this holiday overlay where they staple gun the lights to the facade every year and they rip them off. I've always been a stickler for that. And I know my key holders, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry in advance. But I would rather them not do the holiday overlay if it means destroying the facades. If they can't do these facades and respect them, and get them on and off without destroying them, I'd rather not have it done. I've said the same thing about the castle with the dents and the bumps and the destruction that occurred on our castle because of the holiday overlays. I always said that years ago. I was making videos about this, saying like I'd rather them not even do the overlay if it means that we're going to have a beat up castle at the end of the day. Same thing with Small World. They destroy this facade every year with the lights and all that stuff. I'd rather not even do the holiday thing if it's going to ruin the facade that we've had since the 1960s. End rant. That's for me personally, I get really frustrated with that. And I think the Small World issue has a lot to do with those holiday kind of overlays. But to Matthew's question, like I think for the most part, I think that like when it comes to the animatronics, I think Disney does a very good job at maintaining them. I think the Splash Mountain thing is because it's on its way out. I went on that on July 17th and it was like in really bad shape, but kind of expected that it's going to go under the knife very soon. Disney's not going to spend any money on that attraction that they don't have to spend on it. Yeah, because they're probably going to replace a lot of that stuff in there or repurpose it and what have you. So they're not going to spend a lot of money to sort of Band-Aid fix everything before it goes under the knife. But overall, Matthew, I mean, I don't really know where that $6 billion investment is going to go. I'm assuming it's going to go towards like new attractions, maybe new lands. Who knows? I think it's more likely it goes to that. But I do hope they set aside some to kind of refresh and maintain and give the current stuff some TLC. I hope so. George, I'll go with you. What do you think about that? $6 billion. Is it going to help the audio animatronics? Not so much. What do you think?
I think honestly, I mean, some of it might go for the audio animatronics, like for the ones that really like dire need help, to keep going through. But I also feel like as much as I'm an audio animatronic type of guy when it comes to attractions, as opposed to LED screens, I think as far as like a business standpoint, Disney is starting to kind of furlough themselves away from that notion because it costs so much money to build those and to maintain them and fix them. So so to put all that money into something, I could see where Disney kind of is thinking outside of the box of saying, okay, not to say make it cheap, but to make it in a way where we can kind of utilize these funds and spread them around where it's not. Because if you take, for instance, the Navi River Journey, they have the phenomenal shaman that's phenomenal AA. I mean, it's breathtaking, but it's like, all the funds for that particular attraction went into that audio animatronic, and the rest of the attraction is okay, but you can kind of see where it all went just for that one audio animatronic. And the ride's very short, but just to get a glimpse of that character is, especially in person, it's one of the most breathtaking, best audio animatronics that Disney has ever made, in my personal opinion. But I mean, it possibly could be. I think it would be more so if they had anything left over, but I think that they're going to make it like a bigger investment into the parks than just kind of fixing up audio animatronics that they already have.
I agree. What are your thoughts, Dre?
This CapEx has usually followed the trend of maybe not necessarily throwing that money back into the revitalization of attractions and so forth, it usually takes the form of like both of you suggest, kind of new attractions, new experiences, and so forth to expand these parks and resorts, not necessarily revitalizing old ones, which I think is kind of a shame. I mean, look, Splash Mountain, that whole thing, that's a really kind of tricky one because obviously that attraction is likely to be going under the knife very, very soon, and there are things preventing them from maintaining that attraction to the level at which it should be, and that's been going back for years. Again, once the Disneyland Resort implemented these kind of fall protection rules, it has really made servicing Splash Mountain effectively far more difficult, and that's why we usually see these kind of like annual refurbishments where Splash Mountain goes down January to like March or something like that, and when it comes back up, it looks far better, but it's not necessarily maintained to the same degree as some of the other attractions in the long run. And that's kind of an unfortunate situation, and I do hope that will be rectified with Toyano's Bayou Adventure. We will see. As far as like these other attractions that we mentioned, Pirates of the Caribbean, Snow White, Small World. From what I understand, a lot of that has to do with a kind of a myriad of factors. One is obviously the labor market is a little bit, it's not necessarily where I believe anybody wants it to be, especially for Disney, being that they require so much of it. And what we're also seeing is a lack of technicians in order to facilitate, some of these attractions. It's kind of all about getting it to run and getting it to run safely, and that's kind of where it stops because there is so much attention between that kind of small crew that has to be kind of spread out over the entire resort. So that's kind of an unfortunate situation there. Also, too, we're seeing supply chain issues affect attractions, not just the operation of them, but some of these parts required for some of these audio animatronics to actually run effectively. I think that's all kind of happening there, and I would love to see that this part of this kind of rumored $6 billion capital investment be thrown back into these attractions to kind of facilitate their maintenance, facilitate ease of operation, to make it easier to maintain these things. Like I remember back in the day, Disney used to have a bunch of kind of workshops, kind of on site or in the kind of peripheral area that were used to kind of maintain these things. I'd like to see those facilities, if they do exist, expanded, or if they don't exist, renewed, because I think that would kind of help with this maintenance problem that they're having right now. Could we maybe necessarily get into the production of parts on site rather than having to wait for some other foreign country to kind of deliver them to these respective resorts? I'd like to see infrastructural improvements on that end. That way, the Disney operation is a little bit more autonomous and a little bit more protected, like insulated from some of these other kind of drastic market forces that we're kind of experiencing right now. That's really kind of taking a toll on these specific attractions. We will see. I do agree, however, it's probably going to be directed towards things that expand the capacity of these parks rather than capital investment into what's already operating.
Oh, can I actually ask you fellas a question? Now, do you believe that the $6 billion is now going to be part of the retheming of Splash Mountain? If this is true to the fact, because we were talking about, at the time when they made this announcement, how if Disney's going to do this, they have to do it right. And in order to do that, they have to have the money to do so. Could this retheme be part, because they're going to make two of them, not just one, they're making two. So I wonder if that is now going to be part of the $6 billion if it does go through for the investment.
That's interesting, because from what Dre, you've been saying for a long time, these attractions are not cheap to retheme. And they're not even identical from what I understand. I haven't been on the Florida version, but from what I understand, they're not identical.
No.
So you're essentially retheming two separate things.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, some of the stuff will overlap, like Tiana animatronic and things like that. But
of course,
there's a lot of stuff you're going to do in Disneyland that you're not going to do in Florida necessarily.
Correct. And from what I understand, they have been kind of foregoing some of their CapEx from prior years in order to kind of save that, for lack of a better word, kind of war chest up kind of thing, so that they can
Yeah.
go ahead and apply that towards Splash Mountain. Because from what I understand, it is going to be very, very expensive. So I do agree with you, George. I think a lot of some of this will be directed towards Splash Mountain's direction.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And I hope, look, like I've said many, many times, I'm not against the retheme on paper in theory. Just do it right, Disney. I just don't want to see something tacked together like, it looks very cheap. If you're going to retheme it, do it right. And I think it might.
Yeah,
has
I want to
potential.
go through that breathtaking classic original ride and seeing an old school projector, with a mattress and sheet taped to the wall. It's
Right. Exactly. I want to see some quality stuff here. And there's a lot of potential with this IP. That's the frustrating thing. Okay. And here's the thing. And this might be an uncomfortable conversation for some people to have, but I think it needs to be brought up.
Sure.
I think that Disney, there's a potential here that Disney might rest on the laurels.
Mm-hmm.
We got rid of a problematic IP and kind of rest on the laurels and say, we did our due diligence. We took out Song of the South. We put in Princess of the Frog. We're done.
Yeah.
I want more than that. Okay, it's fine. Take out the problematic IP, but if you're going to replace it with Princess of the Frog, the quality should at least match the previous version or exceed it. Don't just rest on your laurels and say, well, we got rid of the problematic element so we can kind of half-ass this whole retheme. No. If you're going to put Princess and the Frog in there, you have to match the same quality or exceed it. You cannot rest on your laurels and just say, oh, well, fifth key, and that's the end of the day. It does a disservice to the people that you're changing this for. It does a disservice to everything that you've kind of talked about with fifth key and inclusion, all that, when you go in there and you half-ass it. It has to be quality. Just doing it and doing a half-ass job is not enough. And it's kind of actually insulting. Go ahead, George.
No. I was just going to say, and adding on to what you're saying, and that problematic attraction right now, thanks to our buddy Showcase that has been posting, a 90-minute wait at the Magic Kingdom, which had the highest wait time, even beyond Seven Dwarfs Mine Train and Space Mountain. So of what it's, they're saying now of it being problematic or what have you, and, however you see Splash Mountain. But as of right now, it really must not seem too problematic if it's a 90-minute wait and it's the highest waiting attraction at the Magic Kingdom right now.
Well, look, and this is where it gets interesting because, and this is why we had a contributor like Kenna on recently, right? To get the kind of general public's perspective on this, because sometimes we could get, we can get kind of mired in the details, right? Because we're so in the kind of, I don't know, Diz fandom verse, let's say, right? A lot of GP general public don't really understand why this is happening. To be completely brutal and honest, right? They just want a good attraction at the end of the day.
Right.
So if you're taking an attraction that is, let's be honest here, folks, that is beloved. I'm not saying that it's to disparage those people for liking this attraction. They just have a lot of memories and experiences tied up with this attraction. To replace it with anything that's not that's anything less than what it was is a huge failure, objective failure, and I think this is kind of going to be the thing lingering over the heads of some of these creatives working in this space, because you are taking, while I understand it might be viewed as a problematic attraction, it is one that has been historically extremely popular and extremely beloved.
Right.
People are going to expect quality. They're going to expect something that surpasses what was there.
And that's exactly what I was going for, because if it's still considered titled problematic now and it's still popular, again, as OG said, don't rest on your laurels and just say, oh, okay, well, they'll go on it no matter what. No, I mean, if you don't deliver,
it will be worse. It will be worse than doing nothing at all. That's for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And the last question comes from our friend Alessio Pasquale. And Alessio is asking, do you think maybe Disney should start making some exceptions on their weekly rule and drop some of their new seasons of their shows all at once, like season 2 of Star Wars The Bad Batch, so it can trend longer on Nielsen's top 10 originals. So people won't have to complain about filler episodes, and so it won't be overshadowed by Andor. Now, Alessio, I think it should be case by case. I think that some shows should be weekly. Some shows they should drop the whole season. I think that should kind of be a case by case basis, depending on scheduling and depending on what they feel is best for that particular show or IP. I'm a little confused in your question because you said that if you drop their shows all at once, it trends longer on Nielsen. I don't know. I mean, I'm not maybe as privy to the data as you are, Alessio, but I feel like if you do weekly, it trends longer than if you drop it all at once. It pretty much fizzles out after a week because everyone's seen it. So I'm not 100% sure what you mean by that. But your overall question, though, yes, Disney Plus should get into this idea of, for some things, drop the whole season. For other things, do weekly. It really should be case by case. It really shouldn't be a one size fits all for everything. But what do you think, Dre, in terms of this whole idea about how they release things on D Plus?
To your point, I do agree with that sentiment that it shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all kind of thing regarding content. That goes even beyond shows. That goes to movies and anything. It should be case by case with just about everything. And I think Chapek enjoys that flexibility for sure. I think he wants to preserve that going forward, and I think a lot of their new agreements and so forth with third parties has been made in a way to facilitate that flexibility going forward. As far as shows on Disney Plus, listen, I think we'll see more of maybe this kind of Bad Batch style, especially with children's programming, of just having content just kind of put out there on kind of a season-wide basis rather than episode to episode. Because I think they do want kind of children to have a wide variety of options, and to have these kind of things be there to kind of attract kids and get them watching for extended periods of time. As far as some of the kind of in-demand shows, however, I think it's part of their strategy to fight churn and some of these other issues attached to some of these streaming platforms. I think Chapek understands that well, and I think that's why they're still going to maintain that for the foreseeable future. However, I will say, we're getting like 2-episode premieres, 3-episode premieres. I think that plays into that as well.
Absolutely. George, what are your thoughts on this in terms of D Plus release, how they release their content, whether it be weekly, whether it be like Netflix, where they drop the whole season? Kind of where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I think, as you guys had mentioned, I think it just goes as a case-by-case base, so to speak, depending on what the content is. And again, depending on the type of audience and, finding that lightning in a bottle, because I think that Disney faced that similar situation when they dropped the first season of The Mandalorian. It's like people, went all out to get Disney Plus. And then as soon as they were finished with with Mando, they let go of their subscription. And it was one of those things where it's like, okay, we got to keep the ball rolling of, okay, we have to have maybe like something going back to back. Like once we finish with something with Star Wars, bring out something with Marvel. And I think, as I said, it just really depends on, because each person is different. You might have a person that likes to binge watch. You might like to have a person that likes to have those cliffhangers. And it's like, ooh, I can't wait for, so I guess there's really no right or wrong way you can kind of go with it. It's just the algorithm of whenever you release something, how it's going to affect the audience.
100%. 100%. I want to thank you guys, my brothers, for coming on today, talking shop with me. We're going to close it out. Fantastic Q&A. We'll do another one very, very soon. We got a lot of great questions. But before we do, though, I want to give George a little birthday. Hey, you love Carl's, right, George? Carl's Jr.?
I do.
Like your favorite.
Yes, I do. Anyone who knows me.
Yeah. We're going to drop a little Carl Jr. drop before we go in honor of your birthday, my friend.
Sounds good.
There we go, man. Carl's baby.
Well, I will say, if that
Yes,
doesn't give
folks,
you a
we
craving,
only have
I don't know what will.
high-class stuff on this show.
Yes. If that doesn't what, George? I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I said if that doesn't quench your cravings, I don't know what will.
Right. Yeah, I know. Exactly. You know what? Just for good measure, one more time. There we go. There we go. We're going to close it out Carl Jr. style. George, happy birthday, my friend. We love you, sir. If you can let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, my friend.
Absolutely. I thank you both very much. You know, I love you guys. You're my brothers all the way. Brothers for life. So anyway, so you can find me on my YouTube channel, Disney Family Man 23. You can interact with me on Twitter at Disney George. And of course, you can find me here on Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but yet sticky Disney news and info.
Sticky, like a really messy Carl's Jr. sandwich, but just you know. And we got our good friend, Mr. Vashkai, Dr. Dre, host of the Freshly Squeezed Show here. Dre, as always, it is an absolute pleasure and honor to have you on, sir. If you can let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir. Oh, you are on mute, my friend.
Sorry about that. I do apologize. Thank you. You can go ahead and find me at Vashkai. It's right down there. Just go ahead and type that in Twitter. And hey, if you want to go ahead and see me, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55, at least before we get canceled.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
It's coming.
Exactly.
It's coming. Look, listen, you know
It's
what?
coming. It's all good.
Good stuff, though, I will say. Okay,
we had a good run. We had a good run.
We had a great run. And if we're going to go out, we're going to go out in style. That's for sure. If
we're going to go out with some Carl's Jr.
Exactly.
Right.
Fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely fantastic. You can go ahead and find me at Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice, news, and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
Yes, folks, we only have high-class stuff on this show.
This is the drop right there.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. I want to thank you both for joining me today. I want to thank you all for watching, commenting down below. Put your questions. If you have a question for a future Q&A, comment with them down below. We'd love to take questions from the audience. We pull from the audience a lot here on OG55. So definitely comment. We'd love to hear from you guys. Thank you all so much for watching.
Orchard fresh and delicious.
And have a wonderful day. Bye-bye, guys and gals.